of Skwawk Talk on Socialist Telly. Thank you for joining us, and I'm delighted that I've got three excellent guests here with me who I will name in no particular order of preference. We have Karie Murphy, who was Jeremy Corbyn's former Chief of Staff. We have former Labour MP and former Labour member, Thelma Walker. And we have the brilliant Alexei Sayle, comedy and left-wing icon, whose podcast I've been listening to this weekend on YouTube. So we've got an outspoken Scot, an outspoken Scouser, an outspoken Lancashire woman, all famously straight-talking. One's never been in Labour, one who's, one's never been in Labour and is advocating a new left party. One has left the Labour Party, and one who's staying and fighting. What could possibly go wrong? So, folks, welcome. I'm really pleased to have you here. It's been yet another weird week in British politics. We have the Knight of the Realm, who leads the Labour Party, telling his people to start putting out the word that Labour is the party of business and the workers, which seems an odd concept. We've had the English Labour hierarchy meddling in Scottish politics, the departure of the Scottish Labour leader and another major figure in the party organisation up there in Scotland, and the English party deciding to install a campaigns manager for the Holyrood Scottish Parliament elections, which just seems like the perfect way to set fire to the party's prospects in those elections coming up. We've had the new Peace and Justice project coming up yesterday, and that was watched by tens of thousands of people, and very kindly included the shout out for Socialist Telly. And we've had a new chair of the BBC installed, so there should be plenty here for everybody to talk about. Alexei, you've mentioned that you may need to dip out a little bit early tonight, so let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about what you're getting up to at the moment and how the situation is looking there at the BBC.
When Tim Davie, who is the Director General, was reputed to have said a couple of months ago that he wanted, and he denied it, but that he'd said that there were too many left-wing comedians on the television. The Today programme wanted me to come on and commit career suicide by criticising him. I swerved that opportunity, and I was, also so then to talk about the new chairman is
the reason I ask is because your podcasts that you started last autumn, you were chatting to a couple of comedy writers that you've known for a long time, and you mentioned that the situation in the BBC was a bit of a dichotomy between the news and current affairs people being very Tory aligned, and the other departments there. But obviously we've had now the new chair who's come out with a
I didn't know what did he say?
Well, he criticised the recent drama, which I believe starred Hugh Laurie, for making Tories out to be too slimy. From my political point of view, obviously you might as well describe snails as not slimy as talk about a Tory not being slimy.
Yeah.
But he wasn't very happy with that, and I wondered if it signals an intent to try to bring other departments of the BBC more in line with the ruling party at the moment.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it's hard to know. I should say, yes, I've got two series coming out on the BBC this year. So,
well, tell us.
At this moment, I have, whether or not after tonight. But I've got my short story.
Tell us quickly about those, and then we'll move on.
So they've got The Absence of Normal, which is transmitted in March, and is my short stories. And then they've commissioned a new series of Imaginary Sandwich Bar for the autumn, although it we differ, that's recorded in front of an audience, and so we have to make. I mean, there clearly is a problem with the BBC. I mean, as I think I said on, when I was interviewing David and Andrew, that by and large the drama output and comedy output is kind of okay. It ranges from the magnificent with my stuff to the adequate with everything else. So I mean, but it's there is the BBC is still culturally does a lot of interesting work. I think personally think that there has been a problem with news and current affairs for quite a long time. That a lot of the leading people in there are right wing or Tory sympathisers. You've got people like Nick Robinson, who was chair came Conservative Association when he was at university, and then you've got even the kind of slightly younger cohort like Laura Kuenssberg, who essentially seems like a kind of government mouthpiece, really. And it very much promulgates the government line, I think, and somebody like Kuenssberg seems to plug directly into Conservative. Somebody like Peter Oborne, for instance, says that people like Hare and Peston on ITV are a disgrace because they don't do journalism, they just relay Tory party propaganda, really. And I think that is deeply problematic. Whether or not it has ever been any different, I'm not entirely sure, really. I mean, the BBC is the state broadcaster, really. I mean, people take the piss out of something like RT, but sometimes when I flip between RT or Al Jazeera and the BBC, I don't see a whole lot of difference, really. In fact, often I think the documentaries on RT are really interesting because they cover areas of the world and struggles that which is not to. I'm no fan of Putin or the Russian oligarchy. I think it's deeply corrupt, but I mean, it's you look at some discussion on RT and it's a load of people spouting the accepted line, and then you flip over to the BBC and it's exactly the same. There are no really dissenting voices. It's a very narrow. I think in a way, I don't know whether there was ever a golden age when that wasn't the case. I mean, what really highlighted it for me was obviously the rise of Corbyn and the way that the entire mechanism of the establishment of from the kind of some columnists who you kind of thought were kind of okay, and it's they joined in the attack, obviously the Guardian, all that stuff, and the BBC as well that put out the untruths, really, anti-Corbyn propaganda, and that shocked me, really. That I was profoundly shocked at the assault on somebody who's really only in many ways, certainly in economic policy, is a social democrat, and is slightly, but I mean, does challenge vested interests, but it was surprising how the whole machinery of the state was turned on him, really.
Yes, well, you said in your podcast, and this is somewhere I'll try and bring our other guests in as well, but that during Corbyn's leadership, you divided your friends into two groups: those who love Jeremy Corbyn and the fascist bastards.
Anti-fascist shitbags, yeah.
That's it. Yes. Which seemed a pretty good way to do it. Which I suspect reflected how well that propaganda was working.
Yeah, but it also was surprising. I mean, God damn you, in a way, Jeremy, in some ways, for getting me interested in parliamentary politics again with your nobility and your intelligence. I mean, because it's highlighted friends who you thought were on side. You see them buying into this garbage and the hatred that a lot of them felt for Jeremy. You thought, where does that come from? And that's something that, that's been a tremendous stimulus for me as an artist to try and examine where that hatred of such a palpably good man that people have chosen, because you make a choice when you buy into a lie. You make a choice to buy into that lie, I think, and but it is it's friends. You're like, whoa, and so you tend either you stop having anything to do with them, or you don't kind of go near, or you have constant rows, or you kind of steer clear of the topic, really. So it's been an eye opener in that way as well, really. And as a comedian, it's provided me with in many ways a second wind, so it's In an early episode of The Simpsons, a therapist says to Homer, the Chinese character for opportunity and the Chinese crisis are the same character. And Homer says, "Woo, crisis-opportunity." So this is big, the Corbyn, the Corbyn coming to power and then the establishment fight back for me has been a tremendous crisis-opportunity.
Speaking of Corbyn, you appeared very briefly in the intro to the intro video to his launch event of his Peace and Justice project. We've got Karie here, who's going to hopefully tell us a little bit about how all that went and what the project is going to be doing.
It was exciting, and people were enthused and very positive to be part of something again. And I'm the kind of warm-up act, to be honest. Jeremy will come onto your show and talk to you directly about what he hopes to achieve. But what we're doing is building on Jeremy's work as Labour leader to develop plans for a more fair and just society, and that's very, broad. But people who know Jeremy and understand his politics will know exactly what the ambition is. A couple of points I would like to make. What we're not about is, I'm a member of the Labour Party. I've been a member of the Labour Party a long, long time. It's not always been pleasant. In fact, it's been pretty shit for a lot of it. But Jeremy is absolutely committed to the Labour Party. So, I'm sorry to disappoint good comrades on the left who feel that we need something different. Jeremy is in exactly the same place I am, which is we have a party, it's the Workers' Party and it's our party, and it's up for us to challenge the current leadership and hold them to account. What the Peace and Justice Project hopes to do is work on issues that matter to the vast majority of people who supported Jeremy. For example, we've just announced 4 specific projects within the scope of each of the peace and justice areas that we want to work on, and then to invite supporters to actually join with us and get involved. Each of the project areas will be launched specifically with policy and a network of existing organisations that we will partner up with to campaign jointly on. So we're not going to replace anybody. We're not going to, sideline anybody. We're going to work as a partner in all of these areas. We hope to work building networks primarily and particularly with existing campaigners, but in particular with the trade unions who we recognise as part of the wider movement. We want to be ambitious, therefore we want to work with people from overseas. We're all internationalists as socialists, and we want to find ways to connect with those campaigners. And indeed, the challenges that we've faced with COVID have taught us one thing, and that's how to use our computers properly. So we had to launch by Zoom, which was challenging and very interesting. And I think you lose some of the kind of personal touch, but the messaging is as clear as it can be under the circumstances. So without getting into too much more of the detail of what we want to do, Steve, I wanted to come on. I had the opportunity to speak to you tonight anyway about other things, and I wanted to promote Jeremy's project. And I want to ask everyone out there who believed in any element of what Jeremy Corbyn stood for to engage in his messaging and look more at the project. Go onto the website, see what happened at the launch today. Tens of thousands of people were following it all the way through on Twitter. Noam Chomsky was there. It's like sitting at the feet of the master. Jeremy was alive and back to being his best because, following up from what Alexei said about the British media and their treatment of Jeremy Corbyn, it is shameful that we pay people's wages to see them conduct themselves like that. And it goes from bullying to being rude, to being aggressive, picking on people, asking the same question 10 and 12 times. The arrogance knows no bounds for these broadcasters. When I consider that I'm actually paying their wage, I've got a bone to pick with those individuals. It's just journalists, they are an embarrassment to their own profession. So I would ask people to ignore what the BBC or the Guardian are saying about Jeremy Corbyn. Join the project, look for yourself at all the areas of ambition that we have, and join in solidarity with Jeremy, who's an honest man, a decent man, working genuinely very hard to make change, not just in North London, but in areas all over the world where people can't live in peace, where people are facing injustice. you know, can't go to bed at night because they're scared what's going to happen to their families, we would ask you to get involved and follow what we're doing, and where you can join with us to make a difference.
One of the things that Jeremy said during the launch event yesterday was about taking on Rupert Murdoch's new television venture, and predictably that's been the one that the media have focused on in terms of him declaring war or whatever on the Murdoch media empire.
Well,
what's that going to mean in practical terms?
Okay, Steve, well, as you know, I've worked with other people who have taken on the Murdoch press and did very well out of it. And, you know, I'm referring to Tom Watson and phone hacking. But what hurts these people most is their ego. And when they're no longer relevant, they'll get the message. And I would ask everybody, you know, look beyond the BBC, look at Skwawk Box, look at Nirvana, look at Karie, look at Double Down, you know, look at Socialist TV. There is an alternative out there now. We no longer have to sit and watch BBC, ITV, or, you know, if you tune in properly, you get BBC. Gone are the days. Young people out there don't watch the BBC, and they don't read the Guardian, and they don't read the Times, and they don't engage with the Daily Mail. And there's a reason for it, because they no longer want to be spoon-fed absolute bullshit. They've got the intelligence and the integrity to look beyond that.
Very good. Of course, we'll just point out, make an exception for the BBC whenever Alexei's on, because we don't want to miss out.
I'm not. Yeah. I am definitely not talking about one of my heroes. I'm definitely not talking about him. I'm talking about current
Thelma.
affairs and politics.
Thelma, let me bring you in. I mean, one of the things that the Corbyn project is about is going outside of the political mainstream to organise and try to get things done. That's not the new phenomenon, but obviously it's something that is got a spotlight on it at the moment with the Corbyn project kicking off. What you've left the Labour Party, how do you see your involvement with politics, and what can you get done? I mean, you're still going in the education sector, for example, to try to push things forward there. So, you know, what practically can people do?
Yeah, people can do stuff. I mean, Jeremy said himself yesterday that the project was about empowering people. And I've never been so busy, actually, in terms of working with education campaign groups. I mean, just look at the leadership from the NEU and the outcome from that leadership and collective action over the last few weeks. And I'm just in awe of that union leadership and the power of the unions in collective action. So I'm seeing across the country that people are coming together, and locally where I live in Combe Valley as well, that, you know, it's that belief in that collective action. It's that belief that we can change things. And the launch of the project yesterday really did inspire me, and the fact that, yeah, it was well-known faces, but actually those youngsters like Zara Sultana, who, you know, I mean, she's already making that impact, and saying we've got a world to win. You know, that really, really did inspire me. And if each of us believe that, and the feedback I'm getting from people here in Combe Valley, who also, I'm sad to say, but many of them have left the Labour Party. And, you know, I don't like to ever disagree with you, Karie, but I actually do believe that, having been in the PLP and worked with some amazing people who are still there, and I consider friends, there are so many in that PLP that I believe would prevent ever having a socialist leader and a socialist government. And I hate to say that, and it makes me really sad, because I was with the Labour Party for 40 years nearly. And for me to leave wasn't just a cutting up of my membership card. I was kind of absolutely devastated that first few weeks after I quit. Been very much my life after I'd left education, and so it's been a big deal for me. But you know what, I'm seeing across the country now, grassroots of people. It's almost like passing on, as it's been described, that socialist baton. And I think there is a political vacuum at the moment, and I'm with Alexei on this. That I think there is a desire and a need for a new political party that is going to deliver all of those things and more that were in our 2017-19 manifestos. Because when I was knocking on the doors in 2017, canvassing, I believed in it so much, in those policies, in those socialist policies. In 2019, again, those policies that still hold true and need to be delivered, but even more so, they need to be more radical now because of the pandemic. So I think we owe it to working people and the most vulnerable in our society at the moment to come together and to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves. And we see so many of them, just the issue of the no free school meals in February. We've got Marcus Rashford, who's our leader of the opposition at the moment, as far as I'm concerned. There are these great and good people, but it shouldn't be necessary if the Labour Party were doing what they should be doing, and that is working with the unions and representing working people. And that is not happening. And it breaks my heart to say it, but I feel almost liberated having left, because I see how it can be. And I accept, Karie, that the Peace and Justice Project is not a new political party. And I accept that you are staying in there. And I admire the people who holding on in there, but I'm afraid I can't. And the main reason I can't is having been an MP and I've seen how the PLP works. And even though there are still great people in there, there are too many who would undermine those socialist principles and those policies. And I really cannot see, because I wouldn't have left a party that I've been in for 40 years if I could see that there was a future. I do see a future in MPs like Zara Sultana, but the way we have it at the moment, with no PR, proportional representation, no open selections, our chance, I think, was if we'd have had open selections. But when we haven't got that, and then the boundary review that's coming up, that the Tories will stitch it up so we lose even more chance of any Labour seats, I just can't see a possibility of us having a socialist government. And that's why I believe that it will be collective action. It will be working with the unions and community campaign groups coming together to speak up on behalf of those who can't speak for themselves, that we can bring about change. And I am feeling now much more optimistic.
Alexei, let me bring you in there, if I may, because you were somebody who got enthused and hopeful, and you've damned him for doing so when Corbyn became the leader. But you'd never joined the Labour Party.
No.
And again, in your podcast recently, you a couple of months ago now, you were saying about the difference between the chief fault of the Labour left is that they think that people are good. And the chief fault then in the rest of the party is that they're very much not.
Yeah, well, yes, several things really, but yeah, obviously my history, both my parents were in the Communist Party, and I never. I admire, as Thelma said, I admire people who stay in. And there was a really quite interesting interview a few weeks ago on Radio 4. With Steve Rotherham, I think, in the Metropolitan Mayor Liberal. And it was Nick Robinson who was being remarkably respectful to somebody who's a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. And he said, well, the Labour Party is my football team, really. That's my, I'm going to stick with it. But like as Thelma said, I think there was an opportunity when Jeremy became leader. I don't know that the power would ever going to allow it to really happen. And personally, I do respect people who want to stay in the Labour Party, but I think that the left's got a terrible record of setting up other parties. Shocking, really. But the conditions are different now. That there were so many people, hundreds of thousands of people, who were attracted to the Labour Party by Jeremy's proposition and are now profoundly disillusioned. And I think there is Personally, I don't know whether how it's possible, but I mean, I think that if you could scoop up those people into a new and better socialist party, there's a better chance of it working now than ever before. Really, I mean, that is very much my feeling. And one of the reasons I never, as a satirist, I think that I never joined a political party because I think you have to be free to criticize all political parties. But I think probably, if a socialist party did emerge, I would betray my principles, and join up. Really, I feel that strongly about it, and abandon all balance or rationality, and so. I think that I think the chances now really to maybe do. I mean, our electoral system is obviously a profound obstacle to that. That that you can't. It's very difficult to get something like Podemos, which you have in Spain. I think it is obviously very difficult but I hope that Karie, that it's all. I mean, also I want to ask Karie really. I mean, what's going to happen if they ever get round to throwing Jeremy out the Labour Party? How's that what's gonna happen then? I'm hoping that this is all a front. That really it is the basis of a new party. That when the moment Jeremy's expelled from the party, he will throw off his clothes and have a cape underneath and say, "No, I'm a socialist man." And this is going to be a new party all along.
Well, in the great tradition of our flawless, naturally flawless British justice system, I've let the two witnesses for the prosecution speak first. Now they'll rest their case briefly. Karie, what can you say for the defence?
So
why should people? What's left to fight for, and how can they do it?
Yeah, I mean, I understand completely, of course, Thelma's dilemma, and I respect the judgment that she's made. And I don't cry readily, but I was moved to tears when I read that Thelma had left the party, and I completely understand her sense of being despondent, and the party's left you behind, and that's the course of action that you felt that you should take. On the project being the Peace and Justice Project being a front, Alexei, I don't know you and you don't know me, but people who know me by reputation will tell you that I very rarely say one thing if I mean another. I've got a reputation of being quite a direct speaker, so it is absolutely not, a mechanism for a new party. But I would say this: I'm in the Labour Party because I'm a trade unionist, and I still believe that is the best mechanism to make change that delivers for working people. When I give up on that, then I'll also be out the Labour Party. I won't die in the Labour Party just because I happen to be in it. I personally don't believe that Jeremy Corbyn will be expelled from the Labour Party, but I don't really want to say too much more. The court case is ongoing as we speak, so I think we need to wait and see where that takes us. But one thing I would say about the current leadership is that Keir Starmer stood on 10 pledges. And I've got all of them on my phone. I've got them as a picture on my phone. And the left in the party, and that's the majority of the members, expect him to respect that. We expect that he shows respect to those commitments. And that goes for the big trade unions who are honourable, if not all on the left. But there are 7, big unions who are on the left. If he betrays the left of the Labour Party, he betrays the country, and he'll not be doing that in the dark. People will see that for what it is. Now, of course, the establishment trusts Keir Starmer. They see him as one of them, so they're quite relaxed. He's getting an easy ride, the media are no hitting him hard. And of course, he doesn't have Jeremy's radical edge. He doesn't have those strong socialist views. And I personally feel he's made some really dubious decisions up until now, and I'm not comfortable with the direction of travel that I see in relation to policy. I think he's failed Scotland already, interfering. Any party that tells the people of a country that they don't have the right to self-determination is, beat before it starts. And I know you're going to come on to Scotland, Steve, so I won't say too much more about Scotland, but let's even just think about the red wall seats. If you've got a community right across England who feel betrayed and left behind, and they vote in a particular way, and you betray that vote, as was perceived about Jeremy when it came to Brexit, you will pay the price. And trust me, if Keir Starmer treats people in the same manner, he too will pay the price. I personally don't think that the hard right wing, because they call me a hard left winger, so I'm calling them a hard right winger. I don't think that the hard right wing of the Labour Party think that Keir Starmer's their man. I really don't. Change will come. And when it does come, I personally am going to use all the experience I had working for Jeremy, all the experience that we had, you know, bringing members in, organising rule changes, creating a manifesto that people could believe in, bringing forward people like Zara Sultan and so on and so forth. I'm going to be there using all of that experience in conjunction with the trade unions to rebuild the Labour Party with a left winger at its heart. Now, I'm not suggesting we've got all the answers, but have I lost faith sufficiently for the party to be the mechanism for change? No, I haven't. And I agree with Alexei on this, and I would never dare disagree, incidentally. You know, from the MUM to Galloway, you know, Chris Williamson's doing it just now. We have a long track record in failing when it comes to left-wing socialist parties. So personally, that's not where my energies are going to be spent. I will be working closely with Jeremy and his project, but I'm also going to be working closely with all the left-wing organisations, from CLPD, Momentum, Red Labour, you name it. We've been in conversation all summer, and had it not been for COVID, we would have been meeting in the Northwest to build a coalition of socialists for Labour. Unite, CWU, you know, fantastic comrades like Dave Ward are all still with us. The NEU are, of course, as we know, not affiliated to the Labour Party, but by God, I wish they were. A lesson on how to grassroots organise is exactly what this party needs. So I don't think the jury's out in Keir Starmer. I've got my own personal views. I'm slightly cautious that I don't get suspended for saying something naughty, because, you know, that seems to be a thing at the moment. You know, I don't know if I'm the right type of socialist to be saying it. I've got strong views.
Karie, pass me a message and I'll say it for you.
Okay, but I tell you what I will do. Rather than just coming on to Socialist Telly and saying it, I will work behind the scenes to deliver on it. We can organise, we can inspire left-wingers, we can, you know, inject integrity into politics, and we can be absolutely clear about the type of change that we want to see that frightens the establishment shitless. That's why they attack Jeremy. That's why they attack us as socialists, because they know we're not going to be tinkering around the edges. We are not going to be tinkering around the edges. We are going to come at this again. And, you know, I'm getting on in age, but when I look behind me, I see youngsters full of enthusiasm for that change. And I hope I can persuade you, Thelma, to come back as well, because we're going to be looking for good left-wing MPs. My faith is still in the movement, not necessarily in the current leadership. And I say current because, you know, a lot can happen between now and the next election, and a lot can happen at the next election. Scotland is pivotal to anybody getting to number 10. And, you know, I hate to tell you this, but I personally don't have any friends that are Tories, and I don't have any friends that don't like Jeremy Corbyn. But I have got friends who are in the SNP, who saw the SNP as a more progressive left-wing party than what was the Scottish Labour Party. We fought and worked really hard to make that change, and like that, on a call with a couple of well-placed donors, the leadership of our party thought to dismiss that. They did that at their peril. There will be a consequence to that. And the May elections will be on us soon. But I speak to people in Scotland all the time, and I know how the people of Scotland feel. And telling that country that they have no right to self-determination is a major flaw. No matter what side of the argument you want to be on in independence, it is a fundamental flaw made by Keir and his leadership team. And there's been others. But that is the one that stops him getting to number 10.
I think that sums up where we'll be going with the last bit of the programme, really, because, you know, I mean, I think just to say on the 10 pledges, my own view on that is that, you know, well, I can't think of one yet that he hasn't already thrown in the bin. But, you know, so I don't think there's, you know, anybody could argue that it, you know, it stuck to any of those. I'm not sure anybody would have been wise to really expect him to. But my opinion's been as well, since he got in, the right wing of the Labour Party, he's not right wing enough for them. And they see him as an interim till they can get somebody in that's more to their tastes. However, I wonder how much of what's going on at the minute is him trying to show the right wing of the party that he's right wing enough to be left in place to have a bit of a go at the job. But it's not even that. It's just this, leaving aside principle in politics, just this basic, the other thing they try to pin on him is a reputation for competence. And yet exactly the same things, which I suspect were done by design with the so-called Red Wall, which is a Tory invention anyway. But in the northern working class seats that voted Leave, we saw the consequences there of treating people like their own opinions on their business, that their own decisions, etc., are contemptible. And yet now we're seeing Keir Starmer and his team blunder into Scotland in exactly the same way, ousting the party leader. They've ousted the Scottish General Secretary last month. They've imposed their own, he is Scottish, I suppose, at least that, but the English party has taken the decision that the person who should run the Scottish parliamentary elections. And I can't see how you can do better to say to people, well, we're gonna piss all over your kind of national pride, etc. Than to behave like that towards the Scottish Labour Party, which was already struggling because of the legacy of years of the Blairites taking Scottish people for granted as natural Labour voters. So again, Thelma, you're not Scottish, but you'll have a view on this. Let's bring you in on that. What do you think about the way that he's acted towards Richard Leonard and to Michael Sharp, who was the General Secretary there, and whatever remains of the left in the Scottish Labour Party?
Well, I mean, we've been a disaster in Scotland for years, haven't we? I mean, really, a lot of social media is going on about Richard Leonard and it was his fault that we've done so badly in Scotland. I thought the hypocrisy of that, to be honest, was just ridiculous. I mean, in 2015, did we lose 40 out of 41 seats? And yet it's Richard's fault that we've not been performing well in Scotland. And from what I know of Richard, one of the nicest, most principled people in politics. And I just think this, I've said it before, that the man I thought Keir was, as a man and a politician, is not so. In the way he treated Jeremy was really vindictive and unnecessarily spiteful. I've said a few times before. But we're seeing this again, I think, with Richard Leonard, the way people are being treated by him. And I just think very unfairly to push somebody out and in the way that it appears to have been done. I mean, I don't know all the facts of the meeting, but the fact where you're hearing that donors to the party are really making the decision as to who is going to stay or leave as leaders in our party. And I find that, I mean, it's this lack of democracy, isn't it, that we're seeing.
Well, it's ironic when you consider that Starmer campaigned on this kind of campaign video of him virtually on the picket lines with the miners and all this kind of stuff. That and then we couldn't seem to be crawling much further up the establishment's rear end at the moment.
Yeah. I mean,
have you been paying attention to the Scottish, what's going on up there in Scottish Labour, Alexei?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I mean, the proposition, I mean, again, bloody Jeremy for getting me interested. I lived for, 30 years, 40 years without having to, have anything to think about the Labour Party, really. But when lockdown started, I, for some reason, found myself almost like without my mind, I found myself reading all these histories of the Labour Party, which I read about really. I kind of found myself reading them, and it was obviously a kind of subconscious inclination, a kind of impulse to understand what had gone on during the Jeremy era. And then one of the interesting things that I kind of discovered was that this kind of a left leader taking over and then being pushed out by the right had happened. That Jeremy was the third, really. Initially, there'd been George Lansbury, who was a kind of again a community organizer and an extraordinarily decent man by all accounts. Being a pacifist in 1935 might have been a bit of a problem, but nevertheless, but he became the leader of the Labour Party and then was forced out by the right. And then of course there was Michael Foot, to whom exactly the same thing happened, really. And so I've become fascinated by the kind of internal processes of the Labour Party. And I mean, Starmer's proposition is that, this kind of managerialism, that he will get elected and then he will manage capitalism in a slightly more kindly fashion than the Conservatives. But I can't even see on that level that he's going to manage to do that he's going to manage to get elected, because certainly as everybody said, the stuff that he's done so far seems so kind of stupid, really. This kind of fake kind of patriotism, for instance, that it's not going to work, really. He's not even, I don't know what anybody else feels about that, but it's
he just doesn't seem to have any political nous to me. People have a natural, instinctive understanding of which way to go strategically, or decision making about people and where you're deploying them and all of that. It doesn't be there to me.
I actually played with Keir Starmer in a charity football match about 3 years ago, and I could have taken him out then, because when I was when I was at school, my role in the school team, I was a nasty, vicious defender.
Just to be clear, because the right will certainly try and use it against us if they get around to watching this. We are not advocating that anybody take out.
No.
Yes, Karie, let me, as our Scot on the panel, well, I kind of half include myself in that because I'm half Scottish, but as our Scot on the panel who still lives some of the time up in Scotland as well, I'll give you the last word on the Scottish issue, and then we'll give each person a couple of minutes just to say what they want about anything they want to, essentially. And as soon as we round out the programme.
So on Scotland, I agree with Thelma. Richard Leonard is a decent man, and people in Scotland have big hearts, and they do care enormously about people who live beside them and people that they respect. And one thing's for sure, Richard Leonard was held in high regard. To reheat Blairism and bus it up to Scotland, get the train the way Jim Murphy and others have done in the past and wrap yourself in a Union Jack will not cut it.
No.
It is a very, I don't even understand what swapping the flag every 2 minutes and making sure it's in the back of your house. Who has a Union Jack up in the back of their house? It's just ridiculous. So I don't know what that's about. But I tell you, do not underestimate the intelligence of the working classes. We might not have gone to the best schools, we might not have been privately educated, but it's all there and more. And people can smell it a mile away. So I think it's a massive mistake to interfere. I think it's a terrible, way to treat people. But so be it. That's on them. But I tell you this: if I was Nicola Sturgeon, and clearly I'm not, I would be loving it. I would be sitting there rubbing my hands, and that in itself tells you everything that you want to know. I don't see, I've got great comrades, or trade union comrades that are in the SNP phoning me to say, so that's the right wing. They see them for what they are. They don't see me as the enemy either. Incidentally, I think it's a massive error of judgment. And there's a few people on that phone call should be looking at themselves in a mirror and thinking, is that something that you're proud of your conduct? I don't know the individuals that they've replaced them with. It's not about that. But I heard this phrase this morning: reheated Blairism is not going to work. There's two reasons. This is not the 90s, and Keir is not Tony Blair. So, think of the problems, think of the solution. Just don't try and recreate something that worked before. Bringing back an old team into Scotland when the Scottish Labour Party profoundly failed because it treated the Scottish working class in a terrible, shambolic way, took them for granted, and then just doing the same old. No community organising, no vision for Scotland, no challenge to the SNP based on socialist principles, and then saying you're not going to get a referendum, incidentally, because we're draped in a Union Jack and we know what's best for you. It's not going to end well, is my view, Steve.
Yes, and I'll just throw in there that Alexei's thread about the vile behaviour of Labour right wingers is seen in Scotland in exactly the same way, and Neil Findlay's comments to the BBC the other day were spot on about, vile behaviour by the Labour right in Scotland. I think part of what's happened is that the Labour right in Scotland has seen people like them in the English party getting rewarded with front bench positions now for their vile behaviour over a long period. And they're thinking,
I've just started to run
it's
the
our
new
turn.
Friendly for Leader campain. That's my job.
Yes, well, he
Friendly
sadly
for
doesn't seem to have much appetite. But the problem is I'm not sure there is a lefty left in the Scottish Parliament to make a challenge in the leadership election coming up, which is bad news, I think, for Labour. So anyway, let's draw a line under that bit of the discussion. And as you've all been kind enough to come on, I just want to give each of you 2 minutes to talk about whatever you want to and tell people who are watching, which are, we get some good numbers these days. Tell people what you're up to, tell people what you're passionate about, whatever it is you want them to take away from the programme tonight. In the last couple of minutes, Thelma, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were discussing earlier about how historically left-wing new parties hadn't been successful, but I at the moment feel there is a political vacuum. I do think there is a need for a socialist movement and a new socialist party, and I think the challenge really is to bring all those left-wing people who are working in their own groups, in their own campaign groups, and doing whatever they're doing with unions together. And I think it's getting rid of egos that exist on the left as well. And I think it's about people coming together and collective action. And I actually feel there is a need in our country for that to happen. And at the end of the Peace and Justice project launch yesterday, Jeremy said, our project is about creating a world fit for the next generation. Now, I know, Karie, that it is not, about a new party, that you are Labour, but I think that world fit for the next generation is a new socialist party, and that's what I'm going to be channeling all my time and effort into trying to deliver.
Very good, thank you, Thelma. Alexei, let's give you your turn.
Oh, didn't know I was going to get a chance to.
Well, it can be political stuff. It could just just tell us about your new programs that are coming out.
So many things. Oh God. Well, yeah, I think. I mean, what's that? I mean, the one of the flaws of the left has always been this kind of strongman, hasn't it? The Scargills, and which we mentioned before, the George Galloways. Strong characters who have got their upsides, but very much also their downsides. And certainly, a new socialist party, I think, has to be much more collective than that and avoid that. The kind of very much avoid the strongman. I'd like to see it happen too. But I mean, if Karie obviously clearly believes that you can take back the Labour Party, then I hope that is also possible. Really, that would be. I mean, certainly there's that. I mean, that's what Corbyn. There's a strong brand, and there's obviously an organisation there, and if that was the attraction of Corbyn, that he held that. So that's my foot in on politics, really. Apart from that, I got two. I'm longing for. I've got my podcast. I've got 2 series. There's also I can't talk about it, but there's also another major thing that's going to happen on the BBC. Also on the BBC. So work is has been going surprisingly well, really. So I will have many new projects this year. But it's a great. I mean, in a weird kind of way. I mean, particularly once lockdown finishes or we get back to some kind of normality, it has been. I've found this profoundly as a profound kind of impetus. The kind of the establishment, laying bare its kind of fangs and stuff is a great attraction, really. And also, in a way, I've almost that most comedians have also really betrayed great of being cowardly as well, I think. And so it's it kind of leaves leaves the field open for me, really, just to, there's that massive audience there who want, not uncritical left wing, because I'm always almost as critical of the left as I am of the right, really, in many ways. But, it's just, there's so many people out there who want to hear a different voice. And at the moment, really, there's very few different voices. I also think that what was interesting at the launch, Jeremy's launch, the focus on media, Skwawk Box and Navarra and the Canary and everybody else. I think that is I think they have to get, you all have to get better. But that is a tremendous opportunity, really, to have a counterbalance to the establishment media. It's thrilling, really. It's a privilege every day to tune into those alternative voices, really. And
I hope they get working on up in our game, because I think everybody has.
Yeah, it's weird. I did when I was doing some publicity, and I went into that Mayor Doctor thing next to the Shard, where all the different radio stations are, like Talk Sport and I don't know, all the other stations that they own. It's like a weird, because it's like these little booths that are like and with people pumping out hate, spewing out kind of hate in each of these little booths. And it's like the weirdest thing, because I think you're just, in a way, you see this, Talk Sport or Talk Radio, this big kind of brand, but it's just a little kind of git in a booth with a microphone, and it's sort of like,
yeah. Sorry, Matt, I'll just have to cut you short there, because we need to give Karie 2 minutes before we end, and then I'll very quickly round up. But I do really appreciate you participating.
Well, firstly, I would say to Alexei that I hate people like you who tell you half a story and then say, no, it's a secret, I can't tell you the rest. That really annoys me. But,
I'll tell you after we go off. I'll tell you after we go off the air. I just can't.
Okay. Yeah. But I would say to Thelma that what I'm about to say mirrors what Thelma says. It's just the mechanism for delivery that I think is slightly different. I believe in a socialist movement. The beauty of Corbyn was he was socialist. It was socialism that was attractive, not just the individual. But I'm looking forward to the next chapter for Jeremy and his new project, where as an individual, he can be given the space and the respect that he deserves for such a decent man. But I'm looking forward personally also to working with the type of campaign groups that Thelma spoke about, the grassroots movement up and down the country, working in different areas. I'm looking forward to COVID being over, getting back to a street fight to save the NHS. The branding that Alexei spoke about has never been more evident than in Liverpool. So I've made my mind up that I'm going to retire and go and live in Liverpool, where politics and football and music blend as one, with some fabulous left-wing young MPs like, Ian Byrne and Dan Carden and Paula and Kim. I just feel there's something for me there, because I worry about what's happening in Scotland. So if I'm selling out to go and live in Merseyside.
I can recommend it. Thank you, everybody. I really do appreciate you joining us this evening, and everybody who's been watching. Thank you ever so much for that as well. Do follow Alexei on his podcast, which is available on YouTube and no doubt other platforms. Give Thelma and Karie a follow on their social media so you keep up with what they're doing. And obviously, if you haven't already followed the Corbyn project, then give that a follow
Please
too.
do.
And don't forget Socialist Telly and Skwawk Box while you're about. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Solidarity.